You are listening to Claret and Blue, an Aston Villa podcast brought to you by Birmingham Live. Let's just quickly talk about the players that Emery's improved the most. Now, there's a section earlier on, Ash, where you mentioned Mings, McGinn and Watkins has probably been the three. But, I mean, we can probably go much wider than that. There was a stage, I think, when we were under Gerrard, and it was like, who has he improved and who's got worse? And the list for who's got worse was much bigger than who he's improved. It's the total opposite for Emery, that everyone is pretty much better than they were before. So if we had to nail it down to, say, 4 or 5 players who've benefited most from Unai Emery, who would we go with? Do you want to start first, John?
Because we've sort of mentioned the Watkins, McGinn, those ones quite obvious. I'll say Buendia, actually. He suits the system so well and he's so important to how we build up. He drops in, collects the ball. I think it's perfect what he wants from Buendia. That was sort of perfectly seen in the game against Leicester, especially the goal. Drops in, slide rule ball across to Watkins, assist. First assist in a while, granted, but I think in the last 5 games, he's played well, and as I say, he's key to build up. He receives it on the half turn and manages to wriggle his way past opponents more often than not. Last season, I think he had like 3rd most through balls in like all of the European leagues, the top 5 leagues. So he's clearly capable of getting double figures in assists. Why he hasn't, I'm not actually too sure. Completed all of his dribbles last night as well. So I think there's definitely a player in there, as we know, but one that Emery can really take on and sort of nurture. I've been waiting since he joined for him to kind of put 4 or 5 games together where he looks like the player that we wanted, that we signed, that got like 15 assists, 15 goals for Norwich, although in the Championship, really capable. We haven't seen that, I don't think, up until now. I do think he's slowly starting to sort of put more consistent games together and not looking like he's a sort of a player that can just come off the bench and impact the game for 20 minutes and run around and buzz around players. And instead, he can start a game and last for 80, 90 minutes and be useful. We might not do it across the whole game, but if he can start to do it more often than not in the games that he plays under Emery, I think that we've got a really good talent there, and one that, just to say, that he can bring on and get the most out of.
That was his first assist of the season last night, wasn't it, Ash?
He was, yeah. Long time
That's
coming,
mad.
that. Crazy, isn't it? All the through balls he plays in. I think he threaded Watkins in against Palace, 1-on-1. I love Douglas Luiz's little ball into him, little chip in over Dewsbury Hall, little dink into Buendia's path as well before that. So I'm going to say Douglas Luiz has been huge under Emery. I think he picked him out after the Bournemouth win as the best player since he arrived on a long-term contract now. Arsenal wanted him badly last summer. I don't think Gerrard got the best out of him at the time. But in this system, Douglas Luiz is everywhere. He starts the play. You can trust him getting the ball. In the podcast you guys did, technically, Douglas is the best player at the club.
Yeah.
If you ball at your feet, he's range of passing. You've seen it against Chelsea, that ball over the top and Watkins was in. Okay, it came via Cucurella, but he's got everything, Douglas. He really has. I'm miffed how he's not in the Brazil setup with the manager there going with a lot of uncapped players. I think, technically, he's nice to watch, Douglas, and he's had an assist to his game this season as well. He's had the odd goal as well.
Goals from the corner, yeah.
Goals from corners, goals from ghosting into the box and tapping in. So he's everywhere, Douglas. He starts it, finishes it. Such a key player, and I think he'll remain a key player for Villa moving forward as well. So Douglas Luiz, massive beneficiary of Emery and Emery ball, as they call it. So, yeah. Kudos to the Brazilian.
The fact that we've been without Kamara on this run, if you'd have said that at the start of the season, that you'll be without Kamara throughout the season for a lengthy period of time twice. I know he only missed two league games before last night with the most recent injury, but felt like he was maybe rushed back a little bit and didn't play great against Chelsea. Come off at half time, I think, and obviously didn't feature last night and clearly not quite ready just yet. But if you'd have said you were going to be without Kamara for a couple of spells this season, you'd kind of panic and go, "Cross, we've got no midfield without him." He's key to the system under Gerrard at the time. Now it's Douglas Luiz is key to that system, and the fact we're playing so well without Kamara is testament to how far we've come as a whole, not just relying on one individual. My kind of standout player, I think, is a real kind of tight toss-up between Watkins, Mings and McGinn, as, like you said earlier, Ash, 3 players that have been written off several times throughout their Villa careers, not just this season.
Yeah.
But I feel like McGinn is probably the one that I was wrong about the most. I just thought he's got no chance of being here next season. He'll be somebody that... If you're going to look at the starting 11, where can it be improved? You go, McGinn there, maybe the left back or whoever it might be. I thought, McGinn will be the one. And I say I'm wrong about him in kind of quotation marks, but the early season criticism of him was justified. I don't think he was ready for the captaincy role to begin with. I don't think that was a wise move by Gerrard. It didn't suit him. and his football, along with Aston Villa as a whole, wasn't up to standard. Like we said before, that the goal against Chelsea was his first one in 50-odd games, 16 months, I think it was. That's not good enough for a midfielder that's starting pretty much every week and can score goals, because he does it for Scotland regularly. So I don't want to say that I was wrong about him necessarily, because I think it was justified at the time. But I didn't envisage that he'd be able to turn his game around to the manner that he has in the second half of the season. And Emery's absolutely transformed him, playing on that kind of right midfield, floating player, drifting in or whatever. But similar to Douglas Luiz, he's everywhere as well, McGinn. He's absolutely everywhere, and back to that old kind of elbows out, running around, getting involved, winning tackles, starting moves, finishing moves. So yeah, probably McGinn is my one that's benefited the most from Emery, just because I thought his Villa career would be over.
Yeah, I'd concur with that, Dan. I think he's got a bit of elegance about him now as well. I wrote him off as well. I thought the way Villa need to get to this European thing, I think step too far from McGinn. I think he's a bottom half player, but I'm eating humble pie right now. I think he's so important. I think he's been huge since the turn of the year. I think the player ratings I do every week, Dan, he's star man every week. 8 out, 9 out of 10 every single week. I think the one week I give it to Matty Cash because I thought I can't give it McGinn again. But, and I got ridiculed. It was McGinn today. I thought, but he's every week he's top of the marks. He's doing everything. He's playing with a real swagger style about him. He's not just this wrecking ball in the midfield. He's great technically, and spraying passes and making the right decisions. And yeah, I just want to see more goals from him, because look what he can do. Last week at Chelsea, he can do that. He can do it for Scotland, like you've said. So, John McGinn, take a bow.
Well, we talked about Watkins in the last episode that we did in the kind of post-match Chelsea one, about his improvement and how key he's been to Emery over the last kind of 12 games or whatever. But Mings as well, like we just mentioned, not even in the starting 11 at the start of the season, kind of stripped of the captaincy, if you want to call it that. Again, been written off many, many times, and there'll even still be some fans that think he's not good enough for whatever level Villa want to get to. But consistency, always reliable, wins everything in the air, has started to become this player now that can play out from the back, which again, people probably thought, well, if Emery wants to play out from the back, Konsa and Mings won't be able to be a part of that. We need to get rid of them. Replace both centre-backs immediately. Now you've got Diego Carlos coming back from injury, and you kind of think, how does he get back in the side? Konsa and Mings have been, Konsa as well, both been brilliant this season, but Mings, considering how he started the season, similar to McGinn, not even being involved for Mings, to come back and be so consistent and so reliable, everything he brings kind of away from the football, specifically the organisation and the leadership and barking the orders and stuff like that. You notice Tyrone Mings when he isn't there. So for me, that proves how good he is.
Bang on. Obviously, I'll speak about Mings, but it's mad. We're going through the squad, and it's not very often that a manager will come in after like a few months, and you can probably name fewer players who he hasn't improved, if that makes sense. You could probably name like 2 players who he hasn't improved, which is mad, because usually it's like a couple of players. When Gerrard came in, it was, is Matty Cash improved? Is this player improved? Potentially, maybe. But with Emery, it's like, yeah, kind of everyone. Everyone's got better, and for lots of different reasons. Yeah, the defence is, again, that's the bedrock of Emery's sort of philosophy, I suppose. Don't concede. And more likely than not, we'll score a goal to win the game. And it's not negative like that. It's not a kind of like a Steve Bruce or Diego Simeone. There's 2 very different managers. Bracket, you know what I mean? Similar Steve Bruce's philosophy, I don't know. But we're doing it, well too. And that starts with the back. We're building up from the back, and something that might have been lost on some people, I don't know. I mean, in terms of the 2 defenders, Konsa and Mings, they're being asked to do something that they haven't really been asked to do their whole careers, starting as players coming from sort of the lower leagues. But they've shown that they can play out from the back, that they don't lose it very often. I can't really remember. There was one, I think Konsa made a mistake against Arsenal. I think Odegaard missed like a goal. Mings might have made a mistake, but that's going to happen. I'm surprised it hasn't happened more often, and that's, again, testament to them. Mings has had 89% passing accuracy over his last 6 games. 95% of his passes come off against worked in the Palace game, misplacing only 4 passes. And yeah, it's just really positive for them, keeping the ball out of the net, but also being so important to the team. Them and Martinez is like a little trio, working really well. And yeah, as you said earlier, Dan, to think that Kamara and Carlos are best 2 players, or supposedly at the start of the season, in terms of like new arrivals, exciting, to see how they get on. You kind of think, maybe not so Kamara, but Carlos is, well, when does he come back in? And that's fine. We that's not a negative thing. Squad depth is what we need. And yeah, those 2 particularly have been outstanding. And yeah, Mings probably gets more praise than Konsa, rightly or wrongly. But I think that's just because, again, we know what happens when he comes out. We tend to not perform as well. So yeah, those two, yeah, again, massive praise. They're all good. Alex Moreno as well, brilliant in the last few games.
Impressed with him, yeah.
I did a post the other day for Jacob Ramsey. Played something like 81, 82 maybe now, Premier League games for us. Something like 9 goals, 4 assists, something like not massive numbers, but then you kind of scroll down slightly further and go 21 years old.
Yeah.
That's a lot of football. Like if you probably a little bit of a silly comparison, but if you compare the last academy project that came through in Jack Grealish, Jacob Ramsey's numbers at 21 versus Grealish's numbers at 21, Ramsey's far ahead of what Grealish offered, because the majority, if not all of Ramsey's, or most of Ramsey's, it's 81 Premier League appearances, I think. It's probably, he played a little bit in the Championship as well, didn't he, I think, for Smith.
It'll make his 100th appearance this season if he plays all the games. So
yeah, so that's mad for the level he is, and not that this is like Emery's made him even better, but he's playing a slightly different role now than he'd be used to, and he's kind of thriving as well. So yeah, this kind of whole little mini video, it would have been easy to say who he's not improved, because the answer is that he's improved pretty much everybody, and that's a great position to be in.
These are players that he hasn't even bought. maybe he took the Villa job because he just thought, all those players are all my type of players, and we're just kind of going along with this idea that he's only signed one of them. Maybe he loves them all and they're all perfect for him. I don't know, but yeah, terrific what he's done for the players, and that's why they're loving it so much, because this is the best form of their careers probably for most of them.
I'm keen to hear what people think in the comments about who they think is the most improved player under Emery, so get involved in that conversation. One of a future video that we're going to do is Villa Confessions. I put a tweet out for this a couple of days ago. The first one we got in was, spoiler here for the future, Emi Martinez is not as good as people think. And I was like, okay, right, this is going to be a good video. So there's a link down below in the description for the form that you can fill in. It's totally anonymous. I think there's 30 replies so far. I don't know who any of them are. Some of them are brilliant, and it'll be a great podcast. So that link is below. Get your anonymous Villa confessions into us. Thank you for listening to Claret and Blue, an Aston Villa podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, then please do let us know. We love hearing your thoughts and comments. We'll be back soon with another episode, but until then, up the Villa.